Last year, there was a big storm in my city. It was so bad that everyone had to stay inside for almost a whole day. The rain flooded houses and streets, and the wind broke windows and roofs. I was by myself at home, watching the news and staying on my phone. Around 5 or 6 in the evening, the electricity started flickering, on and off. Then, about an hour later, it went off completely. I waited for a while, hoping it would come back on soon, but it didn't. I realized it might not come back until after the storm stopped. After the power went out, I sat on the couch and checked the news on my phone. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. It surprised me because it was stormy outside and I didn't expect anyone to be there. I hesitated for a moment, but then thought it might be a neighbor needing help. When I looked through the peephole, nobody was there. It felt strange. I went back to the living room and opened a window for some light. Since I couldn't charge my phone and didn't have a flashlight, I just sat by the window watching the storm. Suddenly, I thought I heard a voice outside. I turned around but couldn't hear it anymore. I thought it might have been the wind. Then, I heard it again, like someone talking. I went to a window and looked outside, but it was dark and rainy. Lightning flashed and I saw a figure nearby, but I didn't know what they were doing. After glimpsing the figure briefly, I closed the windows and went upstairs to my bedroom. I couldn't shake off the unease from the knocking and seeing someone outside in the storm. I wondered who they were and what they were doing. Hours passed quietly until I heard a door opening downstairs. I froze, straining to listen, but the storm drowned out any other sounds. I sat in my dimly lit bedroom, terrified, waiting for whatever might happen next. After some time, I gathered the courage to call 911, even though I knew it would take a while for them to arrive. It took over 30 minutes for the police to come after I heard the door open, but by then, everything was quiet, and nobody had come upstairs where I was. The police found the front door open and wet footprints inside, but there were no signs of any further activity. It seemed like someone had broken in, looked around briefly, and then left without doing anything else. Till now, there's been no explanation for what happened that night. About 5 years ago, my parents bought a big house in the countryside, an hour away from my small apartment in the city. They needed time to move in, so I volunteered to stay in their new house and take care of things until they arrived. They had to ship their belongings and have movers drop them off a week before they could be there to help. I arrived at the house on Saturday morning and welcomed the movers. They brought in all the belongings and finished before sunset. Everything was stacked in the rooms, mostly in piles except for the couch, which was set up for me to relax on. Seeing all the stuff inside made me realize just how big the house was. It felt like a mansion to me, with large rooms and long, empty hallways. It was a bit unsettling. After having some dinner leftovers, I went to explore the backyard. There was a big patio with a built-in fire pit and various outdoor furniture scattered around. I picked a small lawn chair and placed it by the fire pit, then sat down to relax. The night was a bit breezy, especially being out in the open fields, but it was very quiet and peaceful. It was around 11 o'clock, and I had been outside for about an hour when suddenly a man appeared in the distance. He was walking across the open field. I looked around but didn't see where he came from or where he was going. I watched him until he disappeared into the fog, but I had no idea why he was out there. After some time, the man reappeared, walking back the same way he came from. He was a bit closer this time, which made me feel uneasy. I decided to go back inside to avoid being noticed. I stayed indoors for an hour, mostly on my phone, but also glanced out the windows a few times. I didn't see anything worrisome. Around 12:30, I grabbed a blanket and threw it on the couch. I lay down and fell asleep in the middle of the living room. When I woke up, something felt wrong. I was confused and uneasy, trying to figure out why I had woken up feeling like this. The house was dark and quiet, and the shadows of the stacked up boxes made it hard to see. Suddenly, a bright light shone into the room, making me squint. The light moved around for a moment, then suddenly shifted away. As I opened my eyes again, I noticed a small glare moving outside the front window. Then it suddenly shifted, shining directly into my eyes, lighting up the living room. By the time my eyes adjusted, the light had disappeared, and there was nothing behind the window. I got up and grabbed my phone, heading to the window to see who was out there. But by the time I looked, they had already disappeared, turning off their light and blending into the foggy night. I don't know who they were or what they wanted. My guess is they saw the movers and were planning to rob the place. I consider myself lucky, because if I hadn't woken up from the light, I might have had to find out their intentions the hard way. It was a typical Friday night. After finishing a long shift at work, I quickly made a microwave meal and joined my friends online to play games. I had plenty of energy drinks and snacks, and I was ready to stay up late. We played for a while without me even checking the time. Then there was a knock at the door. At first, I just asked my friends to wait as I took off my headset and stood up. But when I turned around, I noticed how dark it was both inside and outside, with only the glow from my computer. It struck me as odd for someone to be at my door so late at night. That's when I saw a man looking at me through the window. I froze when I saw him, feeling a chill run down my spine as he stared at me. Then the man shouted through the glass, asking me a question, but I was too shocked to understand. I walked closer to the window, and he repeated himself, asking if I was someone named Jake or Jack. I shook my head, indicating it wasn't me. The man didn't say anything else as he walked away from the window and vanished into the night. Feeling shaken, I quickly closed the blinds and went back to my computer to tell my friends what happened. At first, they didn't believe me, but they could hear the fear in my voice and started asking questions, which made me even more uneasy. Following their advice, I checked that all the doors were locked and also secured the windows, something I hadn't done before. They reassured me that everything was fine, and we went back to gaming. A couple of hours went by and I had almost forgotten about what happened earlier. I guess I thought if something was going to happen, it would have happened already. But then, a loud knock from the front door startled me. This time, it was definitely from the front. I whispered to my friends through the headset, and they advised me to see who it was and call the cops if necessary. Following their advice, I tiptoed over to the door and peeked out onto the porch. It was him again, waiting for me to answer. I observed for a moment, and strangely, he kept glancing to his right as if he were checking something. I stepped back and grabbed my phone, calling the police and quietly explaining the situation. Another knock came as I returned to the door and peeked outside. Once again, the man looked off to the side before making a small gesture with his hand and knocking again. The night was quiet enough for me to hear someone else's footsteps moving around the side of the house. I tracked the sound with my eyes until it stopped right under one of the windows. I watched as the glass shifted up slightly before getting stuck on the lock and falling back down. They tried again, but the window didn't budge. After that, there was probably a whole minute where I didn't hear anything. I just stood there, listening to the operator updating me on the officer's arrival as I stared at the window. Then, a loud, dull sound came from outside the window, like something being wedged into the wood. I watched as the entire frame around the glass started to move. I backed away, trying to figure out what to do. Suddenly, I heard footsteps running from the front door to the side window, and then both of them took off. Moments later, I saw the flashing red and blue lights through the windows. After that, there wasn't much. The police didn't have much to go on. I gave them a detailed description of one of the men, but it wasn't enough. However, it's been over a year since that night, and there have been no signs of them returning.